Welcome into NFL on 365 Sports. I'm your host, Grayson Grunhafer, and we are going to continue our mock draft session. Of course, the NFL draft is coming up, so we're going to talk about some various teams. I have a bunch of videos already up, and today we're talking about the Chicago Bears. Interestingly enough, the Bears have 0 first-round picks, even though they haven't had a great season. They're coming off kind of a very mediocre season in Justin Fields' first year with the Bears. Obviously, they had to trade a lot of draft capital to get him, but they have their franchise quarterback, right? So they're sitting in a much better position than many other teams in the NFL, but they still have a lot of positions to address and a lot of needs, and they're a rebuilding team with a new head coach, Matt Eberflus, moving over from the Indianapolis Colts. He's now the head coach of the Bears, so he's going to bring that defensive mindset that the Bears have had for a long time. And look out, Bears, you're going to see a lot of zone defense this year out of Matt Eberflus. That is kind of his stigma. So now it's really about bringing in the personnel to fit kind of what he's trying to bring to Chicago. So I think there's going to be some defensive guys taken in this draft by them, and I also think they're going to try to help out their young quarterback, Justin Fields. So as far as draft capital goes, in the first 3 rounds, they have picked 39, 48 in the second round, and then picked 71 in the third round. So a lot of work to do with limited draft capital, but the good news is they still have some picks at high priority positions. Those picks 39 and 48, a lot of NFL teams love those second round picks even more than the first round picks, because they're much more flexible and you're getting guys at a better value. So we'll see if the Bears can cash in on that in this draft. So let's start with pick 39. I honestly think the Bears are going to do everything they can to try to get some help for Justin Fields. I do think that will be a priority, especially in the early stages of this draft. And so if the right guy falls to them on the offensive side, I think it's probably going to be a best available type situation. And I think the Bears have a lot of areas they can address, but I think if you address the offensive line and you get Justin Fields protection, you're just going to make him infinitely better. I understand they need wide receivers. I understand that they could probably use another tight end next to Cole Kmet. But I also think, if you look at what they did in free agency, they brought in James O'Shaughnessy to kind of be that second guy with Kmet. So I think they're fine at tight end. You look at running back, David Montgomery is still there. I think he's kind of that workhorse, a guy who they can really rely on going forward as their star running back. And then on the outside, you have Darnell Mooney, and that's pretty much it. So it's clear wide receiver needs to be addressed, but I also think offensive line is an area that they're trying to build this team around the run game. And if you're going to do that, you got to be able to move people up front. And so I think for this pick, if this guy falls to them, which he might, this would be huge. So it's Texas A&M offensive lineman Kenyon Green. He was a former 5-star prospect. He's a guy who I think could go as early as the first round, but a lot of people have him dropping a little bit. He had a weird year this year because he was moving all over the offensive line for Texas A&M, and he never really settled into a position. I think he's a guard at the next level. I think he can be a very good guard, a very dominant guard, especially in the run game, and a guy who I think can come in and play right away. So because of that, I think this is a great fit for the Bears. He'll add some protection for Justin Fields and contribute to allowing that run game to flourish even more so than it did a year ago. Moving on to pick 48, this is where I think basically no question they have to address the wide receiver position. Darnell Mooney had a breakout year last year. He is clearly going to be the number 1 in this offense, and he's a very good player. I don't know if he's an alpha, and I don't know that the Bears are going to be able to draft a true alpha in this class, but what I do know is they can add a very key piece to, again, take some pressure off Fields and give him just more of a chance to be successful in the NFL. So how about Western Michigan wide receiver Sky Moore? I really like this kid for kind of a variety of reasons. First off, he broke out as a freshman, so he's got that really young breakout age. He had over 800 yards receiving, which is really cool because those young guys, when you have an early breakout age, it usually tends to favor really well in the NFL. It just shows how good you were early in your career, and now it's just about building on that. And he kind of did that this year, especially. I mean, he had nearly 1,300 yards receiving and 10 touchdowns, was a complete wide receiver 1 for Western Michigan. I know that's a group of 5 level, not Power 5, but still a very solid program, playing pretty good teams every single week, and Sky Moore absolutely dominated. So for me, I think this is a great fit. He kind of would come in and do a lot of different things for that offense, but I think most of all, he's versatile. He can play outside, he can play inside, he can contribute in just, deep passes downfield, whether it's, again, short yardage targets or expanding the defense, expanding the secondary. He's really good at all of that. So you bring in a very well-rounded wide receiver next to Darnell Mooney, who is also very well-rounded. I think you're giving yourself a very nice opportunity to be successful on the offensive side. Moving on to pick 71, and this is going to be kind of something that I've thought a lot about. And I actually heard an interview this week talking about how there's a particular cornerback who could be trending to being a third-round pick. And it got me thinking, who would be a team that this could possibly fit for? And I think it might be the Bears, and that is Baylor cornerback Kalen Barnes. I've just been hearing a lot of things that this guy could trend into the third round. And a big part of that is because of his speed, but also the fact that a lot of scouts just like what they've seen from him. At the pro day, he was very, very good. I think he showed signs of progression. His 4.22 240 is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, when you're talking about a true athlete, that's what Kalen Barnes is. And I also think his size, especially in a defense like Matt Eberflus's, where they're playing a lot of zone. They're playing a lot of, coverage schemes where as a cornerback, you have to be able to make tackles, but you also have to be able to play deep thirds and also play close to the line. And I actually think Kalen fits that a little bit better than having to play press man coverage all the time. And so I think this could be a very nice fit for him. He's become a very big riser throughout the draft process with his pro day and, of course, the NFL Combine as well. So how about some other great fits for the Bears, potentially, in kind of the selections that they're taking? I think Perion Winfrey in the third round, the big Oklahoma defensive tackle. He's 6'4", nearly 300 pounds. I think he'd give them some nice versatility up front, allow them to kind of move some guys around. He's not a great pass rusher, but again, in this Bears defense, it's not really about that. They're going to want to stop the run first and foremost, and then if you can get some big guys who can just create enough pressure, it's really going to be key in that defense. So Winfrey would be a very nice fit for them. I also think a guy like Kaiir Elam out of Florida at pick 39 could be an interesting pick as well. I just don't know that he'll fall that far. I actually think he could end up being a first-round pick, so I don't think he gets all the way to 39. One interesting scenario for the Bears, I do think they need to address the cornerback position. They were really bad against the pass a year ago. So if they trade 71 and 48 to try to move up a little bit and maybe get a kind of marquee cornerback in this class, maybe a Kyler Gordon out of Washington, I think that'd be a really nice spot for them to try to move up, get the guy they really want at cornerback, and really kind of set that defense up for success going forward as well. Either way, it's going to be a really interesting draft for the Bears. They don't have a ton of picks, but they do have some needs at various positions, and it's all about building around their young quarterback for the future. So for Grayson Grunever, this has been NFL on 365 Sports.